Welcome to Village June, where you'll be getting weekly doses of career tips and hacks, as well as hearing stories of grit, perseverance, and inspiration. My overall mission of this new series is really building community, sharing stories of hope, and bringing everyone closer together by creating a very inclusive environment where everyone feels welcome. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? As you can see, I am showing up as one of my favorite superheroes, Wonder Woman, because our theme is all about turning that inner critic into your inner hero. And I'm actually playing Alicia Keys right now, Superwoman, if you can hear that. Can anyone comment below? I do see someone on the live. So hello, Danielle. Thank you for joining in. Hello, Camilla, all the way from Orlando, Florida. Everyone, as we welcome you into our live, can you comment below where you're from? And I'm going to play this song because I love this song. Can you guys hear that? Okay, I'm a little cheesy, so I'm going to turn this off. So if you are new to my LinkedIn Live series, welcome, welcome. My name is June. Hello, Laura. Glad to have you here. I am a former recruiter turned career strategist. I have spent the last almost 5-6 years building communities, building teams, and I have started this new weekly live series. I think I'm going on my 4th week, because I am very passionate about not only sharing career advice and job search tips, but also building community, sharing stories of hope, perseverance, and yes, Ian, my outfit, I know. Sharing stories of perseverance and grit. And I'm going to welcome my guest. And I'm really excited to see what hero costume she's wearing. So let's bring her in. Nicole.
Oh, hi.
Oh, is your name?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Catherine says hi. But are you?
Hi, Kitty. Say that again.
Are you Nicole? Are you someone else?
Well, I am Nicole, and I am embodying someone who has some character traits that I admire today. Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Nice. Well, before you actually just share why you chose Sally for The Nightmare Before Christmas, can you introduce yourself to my community? I mean, I know we've known each other, I think, almost a year, but for anyone that is new to the show, that is new to you, tell us about yourself. Who are you?
Yeah, so I'm Nicole Benson, and I am the founder of Tentacles and Tea. But a lot of people who know me as a former Googler. I was at Google for almost a decade. I worked in recruiting, and then the most recent role I had there was managing a wellbeing program for our executive women leaders. And I left Google in March of this year to launch my own wellbeing retreat company. And the timing was fantastic because I left Google on March 13th, and on March 16th, Shelter in Place came about. And so there have been no well-being retreats, but I've pivoted to offering online content. And so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that, but I know you've gotten to be a part of a couple of those.
Yes. Well, let's talk about briefly, just because I met you. I remember our first meeting was at a Google cafe. We were having lunch. And I never really worked with you personally, but I've always heard about you from G&A recruiting. And can you just briefly touch on, before we talk about Tentacles and Tea, your experience at Google, what you did as far as the programs, and briefly touch on your, because I think the first time we actually conducted this interview, I really wanted to share your story about how you actually paved your way to landing your dream job at Google with a non-traditional background. So if you could maybe spend a couple of minutes just sharing that.
Sure. I'll attempt to do this in a little bit of a briefer fashion. But my background, is untraditional in the fact that I joined Google as a contractor. And during my contractor interview, I was told that I would never be hired as a full-time employee because I didn't have a 4-year degree. And so I took that leap anyway. I left a full-time role with benefits and vacation and all that good stuff to get a year of Google on my resume because I thought that that would at least help me get some different types of experience. So even if there was no option for something else, I was at a place in my life where I could take that risk. So I did that. And long story short, I proved my worth there. I did a great job. I was eventually hired as a full-time employee. I managed a team. I was promoted. I worked in several different roles. And again, the last role that I had there was managing a few learning programs for our executives. So I think I did a good job proving that you can have a different background and still bring value. And I think that there are people who should have a specific educational background to do particular things. Like the team that I worked on had several PhDs and people with organizational development backgrounds, which I think were super helpful. But I think I was able to bring value in seeing things from a little bit of a different perspective.
Nice. And so you spent, I want to say almost 9 years or 10 years?
Yeah, I was there for 9 years.
And then can you talk about the programs, the different retreats that you led for the executives there on the team before you actually started Tentacles and Tea? Because I want to briefly touch on that because I think that's what inspired you to start Tentacles and Tea.
It was a piece of it. So I have always been interested in planning events. Creating themed experiences is part of who I am. And so the last role that I had at Google was really a dream job because I had a team who could help me create these really experiential learning experiences, or events, I should say, for our leaders. And so the one that was nearest and dearest to my heart was called Sustaining High Performance for Women. And we would take the women out of the boardroom, out of the conference room, away from Google, go to a really beautiful location and really give them the opportunity to disconnect, to focus on themselves, and to talk about some of the things that I actually do incorporate into Tentacles and Tea. But if you think about the name Sustaining High Performance, it sounds really corporate, but really it was all about taking care of yourself in order to be able to sustain. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, it did have influence on Tentacles and Tea. But hosting retreats and learning experiences has always been something that I've been wanting to do even prior to that role.
Yeah, and I think it's so important too, just because I know even at Google, even within tech, we often experience burnout. So I'm glad that Google had that initiative to really support their employees by disconnecting and not checking email to really focus on themselves as far as extending learning for self-care. And because I think we talked about this too, if you're not 100% okay mentally, how can you be 100% with productivity at work or at home or with your family?
Yeah,
right?
I think it's, I don't want to say impossible, but I think it would be really challenging to ever be 100%. But I think so many of us are running at a much smaller percentage of what is really healthy.
Right.
And so I think that's, it's really important to just take care of our mental health in order to be able to do things at work or things at home or even things that we enjoy.
Right, exactly. So now let's talk about the story behind Tentacles and Tea and how it all started. I'm going to actually pull up your website. There's some beautiful images here and actually showcases the different retreats that you posted as well as your workshops. So why don't you kind of tell everyone out there what inspired you to start Tentacles and Tea?
So the first question I always get is, what is up with the name? So maybe I'll start with that.
Okay.
Tentacles and Tea was formed from the fact that I have always been really intrigued by the octopus. It is super smart. It is able to camouflage. It can change the texture and color of its skin to escape. It can ink, obviously, which is pretty well known. It's even been known to cut off a limb in order to escape prey. And so I wanted to be more like an octopus and incorporate that into my trainings to show people that sometimes we should stand up for ourselves, and sometimes the best thing that we could possibly do is walk away from a situation. So that's where tentacles comes from. Side note, octopuses don't actually have tentacles. Tentacles have, so an octopus has a limb or an arm with suckers all the way down, and tentacles only have suckers at the very end. So there's a fun fact. If nobody takes anything else away from this, they'll learn that octopuses don't have tentacles.
Now you know that octopuses don't have tentacles.
Yes. So that's where the tentacles piece comes from. And tea, because my grandma used to make this special tea at all the holidays called dressy tea. And we used to have tea parties. And I've always loved the fancy kind of fun of tea parties. So you get to eat cute foods and spend time with your friends. And so my goal with Tentacles and Tea is to incorporate well-being content with some fun, some good conversations, and definitely some good food. So that's where the name came from. And again, right now I'm running well-being content online. And the signature program that I have is called Next Level You. And Next Level You is a 6-week program that helps people who are feeling overwhelmed, stressed out, potentially nearing or at burnout, who just want really simple, actionable tips. So if you come to this class, I say, here's 15 different things that you can try this week. Choose one. Don't get overwhelmed. Make it as simple as possible as you can for yourself. So maybe that's 5 minutes one time or 5 minutes a day. But the person who comes gets to make that choice. And then week over week, we talk about a lot of different tools. So at the end, you're happier, more resilient. You've got tools to overcome imposter syndrome. And in your video that you posted earlier today, you'll get more calm.
No, exactly. And I am a little bit more calm. I'm a work in progress, though, because I did almost experience burnout a couple of weeks ago. What was great about your workshop is you provided so many different tools that I think you're going to actually share one tool that will help people overcome imposter syndrome. But I actually do want to touch on this because I know ideally you wanted to have this business to take women on different retreats all over the country, all over the world. And I feel like you and I are actually both on the same journey together. I mean, I remember recalling back at the Google Cafe, we were talking about our ideas, and then bam, COVID hit. Right. And both, I got laid off in April, and I feel like we've been on this journey together. I mean, you were part of my first online workshop, and you stopped by on my first live, and I'm just so appreciative of you. But talk to me about, Ian says, oh, hey, I want to retreat. Ian, I want to ask Ian this, if you could be anywhere in the world right now, Ian, where would you be and why? Hopefully we could put that on Nicole's travel list when COVID is over. But what I wanted to ask you is how were you able to pivot during COVID? Like, what was your thought process? You left Google and then bam, COVID hit. So kind of walk me through your experience with kind of navigating through that.
It was messy. So I left Google with the intent of taking the next 6 months to do training. So I had mindful self-compassion training planned. I had a silent retreat on the books, and I had a trip to Switzerland planned with a friend so we could go scope out locations and activities. And I was also supposed to get my yoga teacher training in Thailand. None of those things happened. And so at first I thought, okay, we're at shelter in place for 3 weeks. I'll just continue with online learning. Then it was 6 weeks. And obviously with hindsight, we know how it all went. So I think it was June, I decided that I needed to pivot to offering my content online, which was a little bit of a difficult decision for me to make because I love connecting in person with people. And I wasn't sure if I would be able to give people the experiences that I wanted them to have without being in person. And so what I've done is I've really taken the content piece and massaged that over the past few months to make it something where I feel people are going to get that value. So they can walk away less stressed. They can walk away happier. And then once we are traveling again, be able to add in, chocolate making and cheese tasting,
Ooh.
and goat yoga and time at the spa and,
Oh,
making ravioli from scratch, whatever it is. So incorporating some experiences, connection with other women, and also well-being content.
oh my gosh. Hopefully this could happen in, I don't know, next year.
Well,
We'll see. I will write that in my journal. That's what I loved about you though, is you were able to pivot quickly and you were able to still stay true to your commitment with your business by just delivering it on an online form. And you built this amazing community I attended it in August. And it was the perfect timing because I was still getting over, the emotions that a layoff brings. And with feeling anxious of always being at home, not being able to travel with my children, and then also to managing my business and building myself up again and feeling confident. And so it was perfect timing. So why don't we talk about, let's see, what should we talk about next? Let's talk about, briefly, I want to talk about briefly like the transformation I felt. Hi, Broadus. Andrina says wine tasting. I miss wine tasting too. Thanks, Carl. Carl says we love the costumes. Actually, let's talk about that. I'm kind of jumping all over the place. So why did you choose Peggy today? Is it
Sally.
Peggy? Sally? And I've seen The Nightmare Before Christmas, but why did you choose Sally?
Well, I've seen The Nightmare Before Christmas probably 100 times. It is definitely one of my favorite movies. But what I like about Sally is that she was a person who was held captive and she poisoned that person. She threw herself from a window to escape safely, knowing she could actually sew herself back together. She was, I feel, independent in some ways and able to take care of herself. And I love that it's not that story where you are waiting for somebody else to save you. I feel like she actually did a lot of things to help others. Now, overall, she made some decisions that probably weren't super smart, but I feel that we've all been in that place where there is someone around us who has made a decision to do something. So in this case, Jack had decided that he was going to steal Christmas, essentially, right? She knew it was not a good idea, but she also probably realized, I'm going to think that she was self-aware enough to know that there was nothing she could do to change somebody else's mind. And so she was just there for when things inevitably went wrong. So I feel like she stood up for herself. And sometimes the best thing we can do for other people is just be there for them when they're making a decision that we don't necessarily agree with.
I love that. And I love that you did. Actually, before we went on live, I said, Nicole, should we do this? Should I take this off midway? And she's like, no, let's do it. Let's be different. Let's embrace this. Like, we're all about themes. And our thing is, it's about embracing your inner hero. And the reason why I chose Wonder Woman, I've just been obsessed with her. I feel like we share the same superpowers and strengths as far as being compassionate, being very highly competitive, which I am, but being stubborn as well. So people are always asking me, you're like super mom or Wonder Mom, how do you do everything? And for me, what I've been always telling people, it's not about playing the balancing act. It's about, I think I've told this to you before too, is integrating everything together. I talk about my children a lot on my journey here on LinkedIn because they're part of my why. And I think it's just a matter of just integrating everything just to be whole. And yes, there's some days where I'm not going to be able to balance everything and feel very anxious. But thanks to attending your workshop and having you as a friend and mentor, I've incorporated different strategies. For example, I think I told you because we did meet the day I went live for the first time. and I told Nicole that there was this breathing technique that I've learned and picked up from her workshop where I'm holding, how does it go? I'm holding my chest and I'm breathing in 3 times in and out. And I was literally going to throw up before I went live for the first time. And it's just getting easier as the time goes. But what is your favorite technique or practice that you use whenever you feel anxious?
Oh my gosh, I have so many, but the one that you were just talking about is really pulled from Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion. And one of the things that she talks about is giving yourself compassionate touch. And so one thing you can do is, put 2 hands on your heart, or, giving yourself a hug, or putting 1 hand on your heart and 1 hand on your belly and just telling yourself, this moment sucks and this is really hard. And just giving yourself compassion in that moment is something that I've done. Sometimes I'll even just, hold my hands and I'll think, this sucks right now. And just acknowledging what I'm feeling, I think, is the first step. I'm just looking at the comments now. Yes.
Carl says,
Jennifer.
great point. Carl says, being there sometimes is better than turning people's mind about their decisions.
Yes. So just being there for somebody, sometimes if, they're making a decision that we don't agree with. But on the flip side of that, sometimes I make decisions that I know other people might disagree with, like, leaving a stable paycheck and stock and all that good stuff to do retreats. I know there are people who didn't necessarily agree with that, and I'm going to stand by my decisions. And so it's not, again, about trying to change people's minds. It's being there for them. And yes, Kitty, being true to yourself, so important. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but giving yourself compassionate touch is one. And I often will use going to my happy place. So if there is a moment of stress, sometimes I will just think about a place where I am really happy. So if I'm with a ton of people and I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I might just take a mental break and go to, a beach where I am all alone and there's crystal blue water and I can see the palm tree and I can, feel the sun on my shoulders, like whatever that is. Or maybe if there's a time where I'm really stressed, I might picture myself on Main Street in Disneyland and think about churros and balloons and a band walking down the middle and the horse and, just being in a happy place.
I'm showing your happy places right now on Instagram.
That's it, right there.
And I live vicariously through Nicole because she's traveled everywhere, probably in every continent, but
not everywhere
yet. But these are just, oh gosh, this is my happy place too, just by looking at all of this. And were some of these places that you visited, I think some of them were for work, I believe?
Nothing up there is for work. Like, work did not send me to the beach. The ones that you were just at were in Bora Bora. And my husband and I went there for our 10-year anniversary last summer. And then we took our family to Moorea, which is another island in French Polynesia. But yeah, like, look at that water. It's incredible. If you click on that one with me on the flamingo.
Right here.
Yeah, scroll through that and you can see like Instagram versus reality. So like go. Totally fell off. And it.
Oh my God, I love this.
It was blown in the wind and I never got it back.
Really? Was it windy that day?
It was windy and somebody on the main island went and got it, but like had no idea it came from us. So it didn't litter the ocean, but that's Instagram versus reality for you.
Hey, at least you got your shot. And what I love about it is you basically embraced everything as far as your photo fail. I mean, that's what life is all about. I mean, that's what I love about you too, is like, you just got to embrace your quirkiness and your uniqueness. And yes. I'm just so glad that you are always encouraging me to show up fully fully authentically. But now let's talk about because imposter syndrome, and let me kind of touch on that too from my experience, is I know this is a common thing for anyone that is either starting something new or starting a new job, especially within like the tech space. I mean, I felt it the entire time I was at Google. And I, even when I just experienced it recently when getting approved for LinkedIn Live, I had to double check Nicole and make sure I had access to it, because I was saying there's no way in hell that LinkedIn approved me. I only have these many connections. So let's talk about that. Like, because I know that's one of the biggest takeaways that I took from your workshop from Next Level You, as well as your I Am Remarkable workshop too. So why don't we talk about your best practice, and I could pull up whenever, if you want me to, the method that you shared during the workshop.
Sure. So let me share a little bit first. First, I wanted to comment back on what you just said. I think that, yes, Maria is so beautiful. I know that you are resonating with your followers and admirers because you are yourself. You put it out there. And I think people are really looking for authenticity right now. Like, I have people that I follow who have those perfectly curated Instagram feeds, and then I unfollow them pretty soon afterward because it just doesn't feel like I'm getting to know that person. Like, there are photography sites that I will follow for sure, just for beautiful images. But if I'm following a person to learn something, I want to know more about that person. And so I think that it's awesome that you are being yourself and you are being authentic and resonating with so many people.
Thank you.
So as far as imposter syndrome goes, I think one of the biggest things that we can do is just talk about it. I share this in Next Level You, but the first people to call it imposter syndrome actually went back and said they wish they could have never named it that, because it's having an experience. So it's having an imposter experience, and how most of everybody on the planet will have this experience at some point in their lives. And so I think a lot of people think that it's something that you feel all the time, which isn't necessarily true. Like, I have feelings of this when I am pushing myself outside my comfort zone, when I am trying something new. And I think that is completely fair and valid. And you had asked me what some of my superpowers were, and I put on there courage. And courage is doing something even though you're afraid while you're doing it, or afraid of doing it. And so I think with imposter syndrome, the first thing we have to do is talk about it and realize that it is such a common experience. I was thinking about writing an article called what I have in common with, who was I going to say? I think I was going to say, Ryan Reynolds. What Ryan Reynolds and I have in common. Because he's someone who has talked about having imposter syndrome or facing that. Like Tina Fey, Maya Angelou. There are so many people who've gone through this. And I think that the more we talk about it, the more that we realize it's really normal. So I wish I could tell you that it's something incredible. But I think the first thing that we need to do is have authentic conversations about these types of experiences. So I think that will definitely help. And then just remembering that making a mistake doesn't make you a fraud. So if you think about the best basketball players or the best financial investors, like, they miss a basket sometimes, or they make an unwise decision and lose money. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. They made a mistake, or they didn't have the goal that they intended. Mm-hmm. And so knowing that we're even going for something and we fail, it doesn't mean that we're an imposter or that we're a fraud or that we shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's kind of baseline foundational. And then I'm sharing, I don't know if I should just put this in the comments, a link to it. But there's a worksheet. If somebody wants to get really analytical and examine a thought that they're having, there is a worksheet. Let me just type it in here.
Is it this one?
It is that one.
Yes. But I loved how you said that we need to really embrace it and acknowledge it and really understand why we're dealing with it. And it is common. And the best thing, like you said, is to talk about it. It's not discussed as often as it should be, like on LinkedIn. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation, is because I always feel like an imposter. But I think I've said this too from your workshop. For me, what I've done is I name it to tame it by acknowledging it I journal why I'm feeling this way, but also too, the thing that I picked up from your I Am Remarkable workshop is I think you talked about writing down, and even in your next level workshop, is writing the different values, core values,
Mm-hmm.
accomplishments, and milestones. That way, if you do feel that way, you could just look back at it and say, you know what? I am qualified to be here. I am qualified. Like, I know why LinkedIn approved me for live access is because I am who I am, you know? Um, but yeah, I'm glad that you said that. But yeah, let's talk about this star method here when it comes to understanding our emotions when it comes to imposter syndrome.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, the I Am Remarkable workshop is a Google initiative, and I'm one of their volunteer facilitators. And we talk about how difficult it is to talk about our accomplishments sometimes, and how that is one layer, but imposter syndrome is just something else that is another challenge. So, there is knowing that I've done something worthy or great and not feeling comfortable talking about it. Imposter syndrome is when I may not even realize that I did something that was noteworthy that I should talk about. And so I think there are several layers that you need to get through for some of us. And I hope I spelled everything right, but it's tentaclesandtea.com/star. And with this worksheet, I want to emphasize that this is super analytical, and it is coaching or almost taking yourself through a therapy session about that one thought. So the first thing that you do is you write down that thought. Like, okay, what am I thinking? I'm thinking that, I shouldn't be approved for LinkedIn Live. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to study and scrutinize that particular thought. And there's a series of questions that you go through. And then you test that thought. You look at alternates to that thought. And then you restructure your thought, which is the last page. But you are able to take yourself through this. And this should take you probably, 15 minutes to look through a thought. And I think it's something that we don't always take the time to do. We either brush away the thought, or sometimes we'll get into an overthinking or rumination on that thought. And we just think the same things over and over and over and over. And this is a way to get you through that.
I love that. And I think it's always so important to, instead of like dealing with the anxiety that this brings as far as the feelings of imposter syndrome, instead of like having it just in your body, in your mind, I think it's important to write it out, because when you write it out and do this exercise, it's done with. You've dealt with those emotions, right? And you've done this exercise to kind of help you get through it. So I love that and that's actually what I loved about your workshop is you had a lot of worksheets, and then also to different writing prompts, but we also talked about our feelings and our experiences, and like the video that I shared today, it was a very safe space to talk about anything that we were experiencing. So I'm glad that you shared this here.
Yeah. And it's not something that you can do once and be done with, but the more that you are refuting those thoughts and remembering that you have a particular filter that you're seeing the world through, the more likely you are to get over that thought faster and faster and faster.
No, exactly. I'm catching up on comments here. Kamala says, I love that you have ways to de-stress when you're back home and back to work. We can go on a retreat to recharge, but when we come right back to our stressors, and it's important to know those self-compassion techniques. Yes.
I totally agree. I mean, how often do we go on a vacation and we feel so good? Usually it used to take me like 3 days maybe till I was really not checking email and really getting okay with things. And then I would come back and then the stress would be back very quickly. So I really want people to have tools that they can take with them long term.
Yeah. Thank you, Edward, for stopping by.
Edward's videos are so sweet and encouraging. I love them.
Yes, and Edward actually just got approved for LinkedIn Live.
Woohoo!
But he has yet to go on live. I don't know what's going on, Edward. And he just started his journey, I think a month ago. So kudos to him for showing up and doing something scary. And he's growing really, really fast. But someone says, I didn't realize it until talking about it. I'm assuming imposter syndrome with a friend. that I have experienced imposter syndrome, I think I experienced it more in my job search.
Yeah, it is super, super common. It is basically just feeling like you shouldn't apply for that job because maybe you're not qualified, or I shouldn't speak up in this meeting because everybody here knows more than I do. So it can affect us in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I think those so too. It's like when I think I think I saw a post today about this as far as like asking questions and having the fear of asking questions in a conference meeting because you for the fear of looking and like unintelligent, stupid, and dumb. I think that's stupid if you don't ask the question because like how are you going to find out a solution if you don't ask and talk about it?
Yeah.
So I think we just need to get out of our own way and our own thoughts just to um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that as far as like people kind of limiting themselves or not, or because of the fear of what other people think of them?
Yeah. I mean, again, super common, super normal. I have an image that I put up on my Tentacles and Tea Instagram where it shows imposter syndrome. So it's like, I think that this is what I know and this is what other people know. And there's that little bit of crossover. But in reality, it's like, this is what I know and this is what they know. And there's a little bit of crossover. And so if you are feeling like you have a question, how many times have we heard somebody else ask a question that we were too afraid to ask? And so if you are thinking about it, it is probable that somebody else has that same question. And um, I think it's brave when people speak up and ask the question. And so, again, it's just having that courage to do something, even though you might be scared of it. There's no way to get braver about it unless we practice doing it. Like I like to give the example of, how did you learn to swim? Did you learn to swim by watching other people or reading about it? No, you've got to hop in the pool and do what you've heard anyway, right? So how do we get brave? We get brave by practicing bravery.
No, exactly. Susan says, I tell my kids it's called training your thoughts. You take a bad thought and you replace it with a good one, and you keep doing it until the bad one is gone. Practice makes perfect. Or in Edward's words, practice makes progress. And it just becomes
Yes.
a habit, right? Just like for me, it's like with meditation. I'm now like doing it between 3 to 4 times a week, but it took me a while to get there, as well as journaling. So I think that's a
Yeah.
great example, Susan.
Yeah, Susan, it's that neuroplasticity, right? So you are creating a path in your brain. If you think about it like walking down a path in a field or through the woods, the more that you walk that path, the deeper it gets, the more likely it is that you're going to walk that path. And so if you keep thinking a bad thought over and over and over, your brain has a really easy time going that path. So you
Mhm.
need to think about some good things over and over and over. Um, and I'm giving a really brief overview on this. I don't want people to think that thinking a good thought or positive psychology is good vibes only or ignoring bad things. It's not that. It's acknowledging those things and deciding where you want to put your focus and then focusing on those things and dealing with things that you still need to deal with. So
Yeah, for sure.
it's definitely a combination.
We don't want to put a band-aid over it and not deal with it.
Yeah.
Lastly, before we talk about what's next for you and your upcoming workshop for Next Level You starting next month, I like to ask my guests, what have you learned from this whole experience of social distancing, this whole COVID experience, and with virtual learning, everyone working from home? Is there anything that you appreciate now that you didn't before this time?
Mm. Is that two different questions? What have you learned? And is there anything that you appreciate that you didn't
Yes.
before?
Yeah, that's the
Okay,
question.
let's start with the learning. And I will go back to, like, you can do hard things. Like, we can all do hard things. Again, I was very hesitant to do anything online. And June is someone who's really great about showing up on lives and putting herself out there. And it is just not something that I have focused on. Like, I wanted my company to be the face of the company. I wanted to show, like, here's beautiful Switzerland, come on this retreat. And what I have learned is that there are a lot of retreats that I could go on, but I choose to go on specific learning journeys because I see the person that I want to learn something from. And so I am learning that it is okay to put myself out there. And not everyone is going to relate to me. Not everybody is going to like my level of quirkiness, and that's okay. But I need to give people the opportunity to decide that, because the last thing I want is for somebody to come on a retreat with me and then not get what they were looking for because I hadn't done a good job of being authentic and showing up. And so if there's one thing that I would highlight, it's just being more comfortable with being online and leading virtual workshops, which is not something that I had intended at all 6 months ago. And now I really love.
Now you love, see?
Now I love. And then is there anything that I appreciate now that I didn't appreciate before? Oh, that's a hard one.
Well, I'll tell you mine. I appreciate
Please.
the time of like not commuting, and I've appreciated my home a lot more because I'm here more often. And I mean, I picked up some gardening skills, and then even though I made a post about this, even though my son doesn't think that I'm a great cook, I am cooking more because I have more time. So for me, I think it's the time, and then I think I've mentioned this too in your workshop, is little things like playing dolls with my daughter and having the time to actually disconnect from work and my phone and spending an hour or two just playing with her is what I appreciate now, which I didn't really experience before because I was just always working and I was always had work in my mind and how to get back to this email and ping. So for me, I think it's the time that I have with my children and for myself.
Yeah, I think those are great things. I mean, I feel like I've been on this journey of trying to be more appreciative in the moment all the time. Like, I think I've shared this with you, but my family expresses 3 good things every night at the dinner table where we talk about gratitude. But we don't necessarily say like, we're doing a gratitude practice now. It's just like, what are 3 things that, you liked today? So I'm trying to think if there's something that I appreciate now that I didn't appreciate then. Like, I appreciate that I don't have to do school drop-offs and pickups because I despised doing drop-offs and pickups. So I appreciate that I don't have to do them, but I always appreciated it when I didn't have to do them before the pandemic too.
That makes sense. Okay. What about what's next for you and Tentacles and Tea? And you have an upcoming workshop.
I do.
In November. I think it's a great way to end the year strong. I think it's your last.
It's my final 2020 session.
Okay.
It starts on November the 10th. So 3 weeks from today, we're doing Next Level You, which again is geared toward corporate people who are feeling overwhelmed. They are potentially at burnout or feeling like that is coming for them. And they just want to be handed a tasting menu of tools that they can use to get themselves into a calm place or a happier place. And I have exercises where you will be happier in 1 minute. And I have exercises where if you do this constantly, you will increase your level of happiness over your life. And so I really do believe that these are things that can change your life. And I've seen it change my life. And you can see on there, I've got some testimonials of other people who've gone through Next Level You, who've expressed similar things. And so my goal is to give people, and you can keep me honest here, but it's typically like 10 or 15 exercises that I share with you during the class. We will practice a few of them live together. And then at the end of every class, I ask everyone to choose their MVE, their minimum viable experiment. And you get to choose any one of those 15 tools that seems like it's the best for your life, for what you have going on right now. And again, it could be something that takes you 5 minutes, or it can be something that takes you an hour. It could be something that you do once. It could be something that you do every day. But you are really in charge of what you walk away with and what you want to practice. And my goal is to provide all these options. If anybody is familiar with Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 7, and I like options. So that's the way that I built my course, is to give you options You choose what you like. We scratch the surface on a lot of different things. And if you find that, gratitude seems to do wonders for me, I can give you some resources so you can go wild on researching gratitude or happiness or whatever it is. But I'll give you kind of a tasting of a lot of different tools.
Yeah, a tasting menu of different tools to help.
Love me a tasting menu.
I didn't read this to you the last time we chatted, but you did a survey before we started, a questionnaire.
Before we started
Next Level You workshop.
Oh, yes.
And I was reading this today, and I was like, and I talked about it in the video that I shared today, the transformation, because I wasn't as calm as I am now. And definitely there's still areas of improvement, but I am a lot calmer because of your workshop. But you asked, one of the questions is, what do you want to get out of this course? And I said, I hope to find new ways on how to stay calm and find peace during these challenging times. I'm also hoping to leave this workshop having more confidence and learning best practices on how to overcome imposter syndrome, which I have. And then why is now the right time for you to invest in yourself? And I just want to tell everyone out there, you should always invest in yourself. You are the biggest asset in your life. And I know companies have these different tuition reimbursement or rewards for the employees. Make sure you use that before the end of the year is up, because once it's gone, it's gone. But the question that you asked me is, why is the right time for me to invest in myself? And I said, I think it's really important to learn new ways to practice self-care. This program couldn't come at a better time. My birthday's around the corner, and I'm hoping to enter this new year of life with more clarity, confidence, and resilience.
And how did we do?
We did good. I feel like every time we catch up, I'm always at the next level, or I've accomplished the goal.
So next level you really helps you get to the next level.
Yeah, so I just put Nicole's websites in the comment section. Please, if you have any questions, reach out to her. But I want to thank you again so much for being one of my cheerleaders in life. And I've learned so much from you. I can't wait to see where Tentacles and Tea is in 2021. I want to say hi to Cassandra. Cassandra, she actually commented in one of our posts. She says, good for you to share your personal story. Nice to hear you got everything out of it you asked for. Well, not everything, but for the most part.
What did you ask for that you didn't get?
Wait, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm going to take that back.
It's helpful for me to know.
Asked for? Like in the workshop?
Yeah.
No, I got everything that I asked for.
I'm assuming that that's what she was talking about, but maybe not. No. Cassandra, if we're totally missing that.
Yeah. I got everything that I asked for. The one thing that I do want to learn, maybe this is something that you could do next year, is something like practices on productivity and time management, which I am better at, but I could always improve. Just that
I have wonderful people I can point you to. Okay. That is I want to focus on well-being and wellness. And as a result of these things, you will end up more productive. But I don't want to tell you how to get to inbox zero. There's great people. There are wonderful people that I know who are productivity experts.
Yes,
but I can tell you that.
Yeah. I spoke to one who's a software engineer on Friday, and he interviewed me on his podcast. He's a productivity coach, and I'm going to schedule some time with him. But yes, you're right. But yes, I did, Cassandra. I got everything that I asked for from the workshop. And what's great is I can look back at everything. If, like I told you 2 weeks ago, I was feeling burnout. And I could just go back to my toolkit that I learned from you and then just start incorporating those practices. So I want to thank you for that. Any last words from you, Nicole?
I just want to say I'm so proud of you. I mean, when we had our lunch or breakfast or coffee or whatever it was at Google, you were Build with June was a different vision. And I have watched you pivot and again, put yourself out there and grow your audience while being authentic, because I've seen you on camera and I've seen you on TikTok and I've seen you in person. And I feel like you are always showing up as June, which
Aw,
is worth applause.
thank you. And yeah, you met me in person once. Was it only one time?
Has it been only one time?
It was at Google.
Yeah, because then the pandemic happened and then
I
everything's been
mentioned it
virtual.
somewhere.
We've chatted a lot virtually, but
But you know me personally, so I love that you like. This is me, you guys. Take me as I am, and I want to
Wonder
encourage
Woman?
everyone. Wonder Woman.
it's who you are.
Peggy.
Sally.
Golly. Peggy. Well, thank you, Nicole. Guys, if you haven't, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Susan. I dropped a link for Nicole's workshop in the comments. Please reach out. But yeah, tell me what you thought about this live. But I'll see you guys on Friday when I talk to Kiana Brown from Facebook. And yeah, thanks again, guys.